I am leading the show tonight with the breakdown of the Steubenville Licking Valley game, the instant classic from last Friday. Nearly 100,000 of you saw the game-winning kick by Cole Bowers. We've got thoughts on that in the entire game as well. We're going to talk about the rest of the teams in the Ohio high school football playoffs currently. We've got the West Virginia playoff picture to discuss, and I don't know, basketball season's coming up, so I think Zach Delman, the Union Local Boys coach, is going to pop in here and sit down, and we're going to have a good conversation towards the end of the show. Got a lot to unpack on tonight's episode of Hometown Huddle. I'm glad to have you with us. I'm Drake Watson. It is November 19th, and it is time to get started.
All the way to the house, and it's going to be a St. Clairsville touchdown. First play of the game. Hello, touchdown Huskies. Wide open, touchdown Ohio Valley.
Where do you start? Where do you start when talking about the Steubenville Licking Valley game? A game that I deemed an instant classic because it really was one. It was my kind of football game, a defensive battle. I talked about that in the halftime breakdown that I did in the parking lot under a lamppost. Especially if you're somebody that doesn't need 68 combined points for a game to be a good game, right? We had 31 in this one. Steubenville won the game 17-14, as I'm sure many of you know. But it lived up to the hype. It lived up to every bit of the hype, and we thought it would be a close game heading in, and it turned out that way. Now, I'll tell you, if you just checked the score at halftime and you saw Licking Valley was up 14-0, and you had no other knowledge, you may have thought, oh boy, Steubenville's in that spot again where they're facing a team, they're facing a really quality team in the postseason, and Licking Valley's on their way to a 30-point win. And you may have had good reason to think that if all you did was check the score at halftime and you weren't at the game. But if you were at the game and you were one of the many Steubenville fans on the visiting stands, you would have known, yeah, that's the way it might seem, that's the way it might look, but it didn't feel that way. You felt nervous, sure, but you always felt like, yeah, Licking Valley really didn't accomplish much to put themselves up 14-0. I'll tell you why. Because those first two scores for Licking Valley both came off of short fields. Steubenville had a punt blocked. They already missed a field goal on their opening drive, so they moved the ball well on their opening drive. They really don't move the ball well at all. Again, in the first half, they had that punt blocked. That sets up a short field for the Panthers. They punch it in. They go up 7-0. And then the ensuing drive, Steubenville, I'm not going to act like I have the 40 years of experience that they do on their sidelines, so I am in no way qualified to make this decision. But I didn't like the decision as it was unfolding, and I still don't like it. It's 4th and 5. You're down just 7 on your own 45-yard line. Steubenville goes for it. They don't get it. Licking Valley then set up with a short field yet again in plus territory. One deep ball later in there, seemingly in the end zone again, and it's 14-0 at the end of the half. And it really could have been 21-0 because Licking Valley got the ball towards the end of that first half once again. And thankfully for Steubenville, they weren't able to punch it in or do anything with it. So we go to the locker room, 14-0. But let me tell you what each team did as far as a drive chart, as far as a breakdown. So I mentioned Big Red missed a field goal. Let's go. Here we go. Big Red missed a field goal. Then they punted. Then they had a punt blocked. Turnover on downs. Punt. Interception. You see where we're going with this. Very ugly game offensively thus far. Touchdown. Fumble. Punt. Touchdown. Game-winning field goal. Now, I'm going to read off the Licking Valley drive chart. They had 2 touchdowns in this game, but I just told you, both of those were off of short fields, and they didn't do much. Obviously, I'm not taking credit away from them, because when you're given an opportunity, you still have to make the most of it, but they certainly got a few gifts, and outside of those 2 touchdowns, they hadn't done a whole lot, and that's something that I talked about briefly in the halftime recap. But here's their drive chart. Turnover on downs, interception, touchdown, end of half, fumble, interception, punt, turnover on downs, punt. Ugly game from Licking Valley offensively, and outside of the 3 scoring drives for Big Red, it was very much the same for them as well. Although I do believe Big Red had about 4 quality drives in that game. They only happened to come away with points on 3 of them, but it was a game that showed that Steubenville was never the second best team on the field on that evening. They weren't the second best team on the field. They played like it at times, and I'm not saying they played bad because they played a really good team, but the opening drive was interesting to me because of how they pulled it off. It was largely Juice Bryant and running the football, and Haney, who wasn't playing incredibly well all evening. He had moments in that game where he was able to find targets, not anything deep downfield. Both teams struggled with that, but he was able to find some nice checkdowns, and his receivers and tight ends and fullbacks and everything was able to run down the field for big chunks of yardage. And Bryant was able to rip off chunk plays as well. And the opening drive, they were able to pick up some decent yardage on the ground, courtesy of Bryant and that offensive line, as well as some short passes from Haney that turned into bigger gains. They weren't able to do that at all throughout the rest of the first half. Then they come out in the second half. Now, I mentioned a lot of turnovers when we read the drive chart. Let me go in chronological order and read this like beginning of the second half sequence. So Licking Valley gets the ball to start the second half. This did make you nervous because it was 14-0 Licking Valley, and Steubenville knows that they're going to get the ball. Licking Valley is going to get the ball to start the second half. What do they do with it? They fumble it away. Okay, Big Red has an opportunity. They can, they have a gift, and they can try to cut this thing to a one-score lead. They throw an interception, one play. Licking Valley has it back. Okay, let's try to go up 21-0. They throw an interception. We're right back to square one or two or whatever it was. Big Red finally is able to tap back into the portion of their playbook that worked on the opening drive. They gave the ball to Juice Bryant enough. His offensive line blocked well enough. Haney found his receivers well enough, and they made plays down the field to pick up those chunks of yardage. Again, nothing huge, but just good pieces here and there. And they string together a touchdown drive. They cut the deficit to 14-7. And then Licking Valley punts, and now you're thinking all of the momentum is on Big Red's side until they fumble it away. And we go back and forth until Steubenville at some point is able to rattle off another touchdown, and they find themselves in position to set up the game-winning field goal, 47-yarder from the hash by Cole Bowers. I don't know that much was more impressive, frankly, this entire season. But that's the way the game went down. Obviously, you feel for a program like Licking Valley. They thought they had the game in the bag. But frankly, when you break it down and you really look at how the game played out, Steubenville probably played better throughout most of the game. And Licking Valley did a better job at taking advantage of the mistakes that Steubenville made. It's just Steubenville decided to not make those mistakes in the second half, and Licking Valley couldn't get much going throughout the rest of that game. So what does that mean for Steubenville? So next up, they go to Newark High School. They go back out to Licking County. This time, they're closer to downtown. They're at Newark High School to take on the number 1 seed, Bishop Watterson. That sounds familiar if you're a Big Red fan, because that's who knocked them out of the regional finals last year by a wide margin. It was 37-7, I believe, was the score. Watterson's supposed to win this game by 30 points again. Here's the deal. If Steubenville plays this game anything like they did against Watterson last season, it'll play out that way. Watterson is a team that you have to play nearly a perfect game against in order to beat them. If they play anything like they did in the Ursuline game, they're not going to win. If they play anything like they did in the Indian Valley game, they're not going to win. And frankly, if they play like they did on Friday night, although it was good enough to beat Licking Valley, I don't think that gets you close to beating Watterson. All that is to say, this is a tall task for Steubenville. So that is to set up. I don't think they're going to win. I think Watterson wins, but if Steubenville wins, that is just to express how much of a accomplishment it would be for Steubenville to win this game. They have met 4 previous times. Steubenville actually is 3-1 in the all-time series, but one of those wins came in the 80s, and then 2 of those wins came back when I was learning how to walk. So that might as well have been forever ago. The thing that matters is last season, Watterson got the best of Big Red again, 37-7. That game was played in New Philly. This one out in Newark. Some were kind of shocked, and it's been a big topic of discussion as of late. The traveling and the neutral sites and everything. Just put the ball down. Like, I don't know. I understand it's a common thing for fans and parents, and there are real concerns in that aspect. But as far as the football teams, man, just put the ball down. and we'll play anywhere. And if Steubenville thinks that they can play well enough to beat Watterson, which they have to think that way, they'll play it on the moon for all they care. They don't care. They want to put the ball down and play. So it's in Newark this year. That's a lot closer to Watterson than it is Steubenville, but last year it was in New Philadelphia. So, and we'll have other conversations about that in this evening's show about different games. You felt like early in the season when Steubenville was playing Ursuline and Indian Valley, those were kind of test games, and they failed. I mean, they got the paper back, and it said like D-, and ouch, that hurts, right? So all they did the next 9 games, though, was study up. They've been studying. They've been burying their nose in the textbook and learning how to figure this thing out. And they did, to the tune of 9 wins in a row. Last week, they were up pretty late studying so that they can... Stuttering, that's what I do. They were up pretty late studying because they couldn't get Licking Valley figured out for a while, but they ended up getting it done. So now, here's the next test. Here's the next test. And you just hope that everything that they've accomplished in these last 9 games, and well, really everything that they've gone through in the last 11 games has prepared them to put a much better product on the field when they face Watterson on Friday night. Will we go to that game? No. Will we go to Ridgewood? They host a game. They have a playoff game. It's a neutral site. We're not going there. Will we go to Zanesville? They've got Massillon. Massillon and Big Walnut play at Zanesville on Friday night, so we're not going there. We are going to Coshocton to face... We're not playing anybody, but we're going to watch Indian Valley face New Lexington. This is an opportunity for us to see perhaps the best football player in the state of Ohio, and that's Grady Kinsey. I'll tell you about a few of the things that Grady Kinsey did. He, last week, broke the OHSAA all-time record for career rushing touchdowns, and he actually broke it with room to spare. He's at 128 now in his career. The next guy, who was number 1 heading into last week, has 124, so he's got that beat. He had over 200 yards at halftime in Indian Valley's win last week against Jonathan Alder. He could end up around like 2nd or 3rd all-time as far as career rushing yards in the state of Ohio. He's averaging over 210 yards a game this season. I think it's a credit to him and the way that he's able to, you think about playing running back and you think about what qualities does a running back need to possess to do well. And I think you have to have extreme patience. You have to be able to hit the hole. You need explosivity. You need speed. You need the ability to break tackles. You need all those things. Good news for Indian Valley, Kinsey has all those things. You know what else you need, though? You need 5 guys in front of you that are just going to... there's not even a way to describe how well that offensive line has played. And I want to make sure I emphasize that because I don't think, for as much credit as Kinsey deserves and gets, I don't think that offensive line gets enough credit. I mean, I feel like with the way that he's been running, their quarterback can run pretty well also. With the way their line is blocking, I feel like I could line up at running back and perhaps achieve 100 yards in a game. Now, I might get knocked down the second somebody lays a finger on me, but with the offensive line, I think they'd open up some pretty clean holes for somebody to run through. I say that to say that what if Kinsey goes down, right? What if their best asset as a football team who's committed to play at Air Force next season, what if he just cramps up in the 3rd quarter? And let's say the game is tight. Indian Valley's only supposed to win by 9 points. You can put somebody in there, and he could still have decent production running the football because of the offensive line that Indian Valley has. The quarterback can also run as well. I saw that at the Claymont game not too long ago. So Indian Valley, 11-0, the number 2 seed, facing New Lexington, 11-1, the number 1 seed at Coshocton. Indian Valley supposed to win by 9, according to some. We'll see what happens in that game. I don't have anything to take a sip of. This is treacherous waters we're trying to traverse here. One other IVC school is still in this whole thing. There are like 56 teams remaining in the state of Ohio in football. There are 2 IVC schools. Obviously, Indian Valley. The second one is Garraway. Garraway, 10-2, facing number 1 Kirtland. Oh, Kirtland. We might as well not even get on the bus. Yeah, you should, and obviously they will, and they have good reason to. Kirtland's supposed to win the game by 17. That sounds like a wide margin, but when you consider that Kirtland's won every game basically 41-7 when you break down the average scores. That's a lot closer than a 34-point margin. That's actually half of 34. Kirtland is 12-0 heading into this one. They've got the number 1 seed. Garraway is the number 7 seed at 10-2. But let me remind you of who those 2 losses are to. Girard, who's going to play Cardinal Mooney in the regional final. That one's at Southfield or Southfield. It's either in Canfield, South Range, one of those 2 places. And Garraway also lost to Indian Valley. So they've lost to 2 teams that have an opportunity to also win regional finals coming up. So I don't let the 2 losses on Garraway's record deceive you. Garraway's a good football team. They got the 7 seed, and they're taking on Kirtland. And although Kirtland is supposed to win on paper, they're supposed to win big. They could win big. Don't count out the Pirates just yet. And even if Garraway does end up losing, you still got to be satisfied with a 10-3 season. I know there are some programs in the state of Ohio that would consider that kind of season falling short of expectations. But you have other schools. I think about Cambridge. Think about how much they'd love to just win a game. So the Pirate fan base is certainly going to be satisfied, even if they fall short on Friday night against the powerhouse that is Kirtland. And we know all the things that Kirtland has achieved in recent years as well. One more thing we got to talk about as far as Ohio high school football in the playoffs. We talked about last week how it was impressive that Danville was the 11 seed and they had made it that far. And not many teams that low on the bracket were still alive in this thing. But they were going to take on number 2 Waterford at Waterford. And we kind of ended the conversation there. Well, Danville said, that's not good enough. Just being the 11 seed and making it this far is not satisfactory. Why don't we go ahead and win the ball game? And they did. That's what they did. So they won the game, and they are now 8-5, still the 11 seed. And they will take on number 1 Hillsdale. Now, a tall task in Hillsdale because we saw what Hillsdale did to Conotton Valley. We didn't even discuss it on the show. I didn't want to get it taken down. It was an ugly performance. This one's being played at Ridgewood. Again, Hillsdale's supposed to win by like 26 points, but with the season that Danville has had, nothing would shock me at this point. It's a good time to remind you that Danville at the 11 seed, that is the lowest remaining seed in this entire thing. Out of all the regions, out of all 28 of them, out of all 56 teams that are still going to play on Friday night, Danville is the lowest seeded team still remaining. Kudos to the Blue Devils. But with an 8-5 record, it's almost shocking that they're this far in the playoffs. I mean, you got to think, what are they, 3 wins away from a state championship? Do we think they get that far? No. But it's certainly impressive, especially when you have that 8-5 record sitting right next to their name. And it makes a little bit more sense when you realize they've got the number 13th ranked strength of schedule in all of Division 7. So we'll see if Danville can pull off the upset. The lowest seed to ever win a state championship was a 7 seed back in 2021. And that could have happened in 19, 18, whenever. It could have happened when it was 8 teams. So the 16-team bracket would have been irrelevant, but the 12-team versus the 8-team playoff field, if Danville's able to pull off something miraculous on Friday, there's your case for why 12 is better than 8 or 4 or whatever it is. But we'll see if Danville can get the job done. Likewise with Garraway. We are so excited to see Indian Valley and New Lexington, Grady Kinsey and that Indian Valley offensive line. We will be there. If you're not following on the TikTok, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, all the things, that's where you need to be. And we will have content for you there live from Coshocton on Friday night. Let me flip this piece of paper over and tell you that Grady Kinsey's not the only one breaking records. Just across the river is Wheeling and Wheeling Park and Brennan Wack. Brennan Wack, the running back at Wheeling Park. He broke the school record for career rushing yards with 4,132 rushing yards in his career. That came in a 264-yard effort on Friday night in their 27-14 win over Woodrow Wilson. Brennan Wack is one of the best running backs in the state of West Virginia. probably one of the best football players in the Ohio Valley that we cover. He's done incredible things for them, and he stole the show and got the headlines in this win for Wheeling Park. Akeem Davis obviously had the national spotlight, it seemed like, a week prior, but he was actually out. So Akeem Davis not able to go in that 27-14 win. An injury midweek kind of prevented him from going in that one. But Wack and company get the job done, and Wheeling Park moves on. They'll play Martinsburg, who's the 3 seed. That's Saturday at 4 o'clock. Cameron is still alive in this thing. They'll play Wahana on Friday at 7. Clay Battelle is the 3 seed. They'll host Work County on Saturday at 4 o'clock. And also on Friday night is the number 1 seed, Wheeling Central Maroon Knights, hosting number 8 Tucker County, and that's a look at the West Virginia playoffs. They're in the quarterfinals now, as it stands. But once again, congratulations to Brennan Wack, as well as Kinsey, and I think Crozier deserves some credit from Steubenville. Obviously, Bryant, Bowers, Haney, everybody who is still alive at this point, much deserving of a lot of credit. All right. It's that time of year. So you walk outside. If I walk outside right now, I'm going to see my breath. And that tells me one thing. That tells me I need to walk to the nearest gymnasium, and I need to enjoy the feeling of that last flake of snow coming down right before I step into a hot, electric gymnasium. I'm trying to say it's high school basketball season. And I could have said it in a less weird way, but we decided that we were going to talk to Zach Delman. He's the accomplished boys basketball head coach at Union Local. He had some great things to talk about. We had a great conversation. That is our Inside the Huddle segment on this week's episode of Hometown Huddle. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Coach Delman. Welcome inside the huddle. We're glad to be joined this evening by Union Local basketball, boys basketball head coach Zach Delman. Coach, it's a pleasure to have you on, and we appreciate your time this evening.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
No doubt. So you guys are just getting started with practice. You're probably 2 weeks into practice. And what have you seen out of your group thus far that has pleased you, and some things that maybe you're wanting to work on? And I'd imagine at this point you're kind of getting to know your group a little bit as you go on with the first few practices here.
Yeah, well, obviously, we're about 12 practices in now, breaking in a new group. We returned 1 starter from last year's team, lost a lot of talent and production from last year's team, but, we're willing to replace those guys. We're breaking 4 guys in right now. Guys are working hard, just as you'd expect. Feel like the energy's been pretty good in the gym. My assistant and I were talking about that today. Energy's good. Everyone's in a pretty good mood right now. Yeah. It's early. Had a few scrimmages so far, and we're just kind of figuring out our identity right now, and we're going to be a little bit different. So overall, though, I'm pretty happy with how things are going.
You talk about energy, and this wasn't anything that I sent over to you. This is our first follow-up. But how do you measure the energy of a group of guys at practice? I mean, what certain things are you looking at that tells you, okay, the energy's good? Because you can have high energy and maybe it's not good energy. Mm-hmm. So what kinds of things are you looking at that tell you the energy is good with your group right now?
This guy's talking, communicating, big on body language. Sometimes energy is spilled out by your body language. How we feeling about ourselves, how are guys reacting to positives, negatives, things that are going on in practice. Are we diving for loose balls, just outworking our guy that we're across from? Big on competition in practice, using our own guys to push each other. And, I think, that's a big measuring stick, truthfully, is how you handle a little bit of adversity in the gym, going against one of your buddies who you might have algebra class with one day and your buddies. And, but hey, when we step between the lines, we're going to compete and try to make each other better. And we're not going to take it personal when he gets the best of me, you know? And that's something that's hard for 16-year-old kids to do.
Yeah. Those are young guys. And in the coaching world, you're kind of a young guy. And it wasn't that many years ago that you were making your coaching debut. Take me back, kind of introduce yourself for anybody who might not know like your story as far as how you came up and basically from the time you played ball until right now, and what kind of path your journey has taken you.
Well, I'm not as young as you think anymore. I'm 30, almost 37 now, which is hard to believe. But yeah, Union Local graduate, 2007. Played under Rich Saffield. going back, thinking about basketball at Union Local, I've been in the gym at Union Local now. This will be 25 straight seasons.
Yeah.
I've been employed by the school to coach basketball, and I'm 36. So, 3/4 of my life I've spent in the gym
Right.
at Union Local in the winter. But yeah, so started out at 18 years old. 7th grade coach, Ben Porter, got the job at UL, hired me, called me in June, just a few weeks after I'd graduated, in that gym, asked me if I'd be willing to coach, and I was thrilled because, that's the only thing I ever wanted to do was to be able to coach ball at my alma mater.
When did you know you wanted to coach?
Was
it when you
I
were
actually
playing?
was asked this question the other day, and I would say probably like middle school age.
Okay.
Started playing basketball and other sports in middle school, and just kind of fell in love with the process.
Okay.
Really look forward to going to practice, and as I got older, it became more apparent to me that I kind of saw things through a different lens. I was just kind of more of an X's and O's kind of guy,
Okay.
and I liked the strategy portion of sports.
Yeah, the chess match.
Yes,
Yes.
I really enjoyed that, and I thought to myself, I'm going to get into being a teacher and be a coach, and if I can do it at Union Local, like that would be a total
Right, yeah.
best thing scenario. I mean, most people's like, I want to be a pro coach, I want to be a
Right.
college coach, but like to me, I always wanted to be a coach at Union Local, and really nothing more than that. And I'm being 100% honest when I say that, but yeah, so played at Union Local 7th through high school. 6 years there. Started coaching 7th grade basketball at 18 years old. I did junior high for 5 years, and then I got the opportunity to move up and coach the JVs. So I did that for 4 years. And actually, after my second year as the JV coach, the girls' job came open, and I applied, and I didn't get it. And the reason they told me I didn't get it was because I was 24 at the time. They didn't want to
Okay.
put me in a bad spot with
Sure.
being a 24-year-old coach coaching girls. So
Yeah.
pretty disappointed at the moment, but probably was a blessing in disguise, truthfully, because the next couple years I continued to coach the JV, and those were 2 of the best years, maybe 2 of the best years ever at Union Local boys basketball. We end up having some really, really successful seasons. We made it to the regional the year after that I didn't get the girls' job, but got a lot of responsibility put on me through Mr. Porter, which I was pretty thankful for. He kind of gave me the keys to the offense and allowed me to do things with a really talented group that we had at that time. We had size, we had shooters, we had ball handling. We could do a lot of things, and it was fun for me to create things. And
You're an X's and O's guy, so it's almost like a kid in a candy store with that kind of talent.
And now as a head coach looking back, I'm like, wow, he gave me a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
that I'm super thankful for, because as a head coach, it's hard to do that.
Sure.
It's hard to delegate and allow people to do things within your program. So I was pretty thankful for him to allow me to do that. It helped prepare me better for the situation that I was then put in a few years later. So this is year 10. Starting year 10 as the head coach.
Is that one of the things that you try to take with you? Obviously, as the head coach now, you realize that you were a guy who got an opportunity as an assistant with a lot of responsibility. And you hear head coaches of all sports at all levels all the time talk about, it's their job almost to coach the coaches, and then their coaches then coach the players.
Yeah. And starting out, I didn't know near as much as I thought I did.
Yeah.
When you're 18 years old, you think you know everything, and you don't. And you find out real quickly that there's a lot to learn about the game. And when I started out doing junior high, we had kids come into practice in jeans and sandals, and we were bad. And we won 1 game my very first year, and I'm like, holy moly. But every year it got better, and I learned more, and I just tried to go to clinics and sponge in as much as I could and take a little bit of what I learned under playing for Coach Saff. And then it was like a total change going from his system to Mr. Porter's system when he became the head coach, and I got to watch him coach and practice and design things, and it was totally different. It was super intense, and there was no downtime, and so I kind of modeled my practices after what I learned through him. And also my longtime assistant, Vaughn Butler, he's been coaching at our school for over 30 years now, and he was a major key in helping me transition from JV to varsity, and he's vital to our program. And so I just try to take a little bit of everything.
One of the things that I notice when I watch Union Local basketball is you guys always seem to have talent, which is outside of your control. But what sticks out to me is the effort that you guys play with, and you've had that shows up in the success over the last few years. You're 2 years removed from an OVAC championship. You've had some deep runs in the postseason and the OHSAA in recent years. What goes into coaching the things that lead to those kinds of results, the intangibles maybe that are aside from the God-given abilities that the guys walk into the gym with?
Well, thank you for saying that, because that's one of the best compliments you can get as a coach, truthfully, is that your kids play hard. And that's something that we always want to pride ourselves on. And it's cliche, and a lot of coaches say it, we're going to outwork you, but we believe it. And it doesn't always happen, but we strive for it. We got to have guys that are willing to do things that everybody else doesn't do. And I think that's overshadowed nowadays, is some kids, they want to bypass this step or that step and skip from chapter 2 to chapter 7, and you can't do that if you want to win, and you want to win long term and win with any kind of consistency. So we're just always trying to hold our kids accountable, try to make them as competitive as possible. I tell them all the time, I said that you won't find anyone as competitive as me. If your shoe's untied and my shoe's untied, I want to race you. Something as simple as that.
Right.
Like anything I can make into a competition or a game, I'm going to do it. And we try to do that in practice. We score everything. There's always a winner. There's always a loser. There's some sort of consequence for losing in practice.
Sure.
And that builds that competitive energy in the gym. And we try to, transition that over into games. And we try to make our practices as chaotic and difficult as possible so that games sometimes feel normal or easier, which they aren't, but we try to make them feel that way.
So you talked about the effort and those sort of characteristics. One of the things that I try to remind myself about coaches a lot of times is you spend probably 10 plus hours with these guys every week, and you have a big impact on their character development just as people and what kind of role you play in their lives. What comes to your mind when you think of, I mean, these guys are in my hands, these 14 through 18-year-olds, for several hours a week. I'm being trusted with them. What kind of things are you making sure that you're instilling in them that they can take with them much further in life beyond Union local basketball?
Well, and early on, that was a harder thing to do because I was young. I was still figuring out who I was as a person, at 26, 27. I mean, it was something that I was passionate about, but I think it's gotten easier for me here in the last 5 or 6 years. I'm a dad of 3 now, and when I first took over the program, I didn't have any kids. So it changes for me because now I kind of see it through a different lens.
Yeah.
Now that I think, well, my kids one day are going to play for somebody, and what kind of coach I would want my kid to have and what values and work ethic they would instill in them. I try to make sure that I'm doing that. And something that we do before every practice is we try to spend 5 to 10, sometimes 15 minutes, it just depends on the day, starting our practice with some sort of life talk. And it might have nothing to do with basketball.
Sure.
We do like a practice player of the day, and that kid will read a quote, some sort of inspirational quote, and we talk about it, what it means. We do anything from talking about what kind of dad are you going to be one day, what kind of job are you going to have? Are you going to be a good employee? Are we instilling the values in you, the work ethic, the responsibility, the commitment to show up,
right,
the discipline to show up, and the accountability piece is huge, like holding kids accountable. I'm a big believer that the kids want to be coached. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might not appear that way, but the best players, they want to be coached hard, and they want to be held accountable, and they like the structure.
Right.
As much as they want to say, hey, coach, let's play 5-on-5, let's play up and down open gym, they need the structure. And to me, that's kids crave that. And so we're just constantly trying to make sure that we're talking about that before practice and making sure that they're not skipping over the little details. Because to me, the little details are what separates like good teams from average teams.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's really talented teams that skip the little details. Sure. And then we feel like that's kind of where we gain our edge.
That's so important because the unfortunate reality is some guys, that's the most structure they'll see all day. And I talked about that with some of the football coaches, and, it's unfortunate, but, there's sometimes no other place you'd rather see them than in that gym, under your supervision of you and your staff. I wanted to ask you, and I asked the football coaches this question too, and I'm interested in your answer because you're the first hoops guy we've had on. But if you had to decide, or if you had to pick out one thing that you have noticed over your many years of coaching most often decides a high school basketball game, what would that be?
The most common thing people are going to say is some teams are better than you, just flat out.
Yeah.
But and obviously that plays a factor. Some teams are just, no matter what you do, they're going to beat you because they're way better. But sometimes, if it's not so insurmountable, the talent difference, that's again the thing we were just kind of talking about, the little details. The turnover margin. The discipline. If you have more disciplined kids that are able to execute a game plan with the poise and the attitude that they need, that to me sometimes you will see it. Like, look at coaches in the Valley. When you go play Indian Creek and you play a Joe Dunleavy team, you know what you're going to see. You're going to see in your face man. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to take charges. They're going to be all over the place. And no matter the talent level Coach Dunleavy has, those teams always have a fighting chance.
Sure.
I think about that all the time. And there's certain programs and certain coaches that he's going to get the most out of them. And that's something that I hope people say about us at Union Local is no matter what, he gets the most out of them. He always finds a way or whatever. But, obviously players make plays. And, we just got to do – my job is to put them in the best position possible to give us a chance, at the end of the day. And that's what we're trying to do, just trying to make them play as hard as they can, give them the tools. They got to go make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about Indian Creek and kind of high school basketball in the Valley. I also wanted to touch on, in your opinion, what makes that special? There's almost a different feeling when you walk into a gym. A lot of them are smaller gyms, and I found that that's almost better because the sound bounces around a little bit better. Like, you go to Barnesville, as you guys will. It's tough to play in there sometimes. It's loud.
For sure.
Certain things, obviously, every school is so familiar with each other, especially in the Buckeye 8 and in the OVAC. But in your mind, what is it about high school basketball in this valley that makes it special?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of camaraderie with the schools, and the big thing, especially with longevity of coaches, is that there aren't a lot of secrets anymore. When we go play St. Clairsville, or we go play Barnesville, or when we play Martins Ferry, we know each other pretty well. The kids know each other now, especially with the social media in this day and age. Kids know each other more than they have in the past. They might play other sports together in the off season, travel baseball and whatnot. But when it comes to like head-to-head matchups, I think like when they call this play, our kids got a pretty good feel for it.
Sure.
Or vice versa. There's not a lot of secrets, and sometimes you have to get creative and find ways to gain a little bit of an advantage and something in the game that maybe separates yourself, because those matchups can be hard fought, and oftentimes we find in the Buckeye 8, that they're all a lot of good teams, and they're just beating each other.
Yeah.
Because they know each other so well, and it's cool to see like the unique matchups and how well we might play against one team, and then vice versa we struggle against another, but then vice versa those other two teams play, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. But it's a game of matchups, and it's the X's and O's portion can be a big part, but basketball, as complex as it is at times, it's a pretty simple game too. You just got to put the ball in the hole, but that's easier said than done. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Well, you said you spent 25 years of your life in the gym at Union Local. Outside of there, I'm sure your coaching journey has taken you a lot of places. What's the best, as far as if you were not on the sidelines and you imagine you're a fan, what's the best atmosphere or environment that you've experienced at a gym as a coach over your time?
Well, obviously our rivals come to mind. And it varies by year, but some of my early years, when Luke Powell played for Barnesville and they were pretty good, their student section, which was behind that hoop, similar to how your guys' new school is, they called it the greenhouse, and all those kids would have all black and green on, and it was crazy. And you'd have to shoot at that hoop, with pressure, free throws on the line. It could get so loud in there, and plus there's only like 7-8 rows of bleachers. There's fans like walking by you while you're trying to coach. Like some guy carrying nachos by me while I'm trying to call a play. It's crazy, and it's hot in there. And then I think about St. Clairsville, like a historic kind of gym, the old school feel in there. Obviously, they've updated it a little bit with the lighting and painting, but like it just has a different feel with the concrete and wooden bleachers, and it's loud in there, and when their student section's rocking, it's a tough place to play. And we've had some really, really unique games in there, some overtime games, some nail biters. You know, we were on the winning and losing side of some of those, but just a really tough place to play. But when I think of other places outside of here locally, I think of when I was younger and would go to a cool old school gym like a Coshocton.
Okay,
I
yeah.
always thought the Coshocton gym was cool. They call it the Wigwam, and it's kind of like you're down in a bowl and it's got the upper level to it. Old school vibes. I think of Meadowbrook as a kid, going to tournament games. I miss the days of, like, you go to one venue and you would see two games. You'd see like a 6 o'clock and an 8 o'clock game, and you could go. And I remember going with my grandpa as a kid, and we'd load up and get in a van with one of his friends and a lot of older guys, and they'd let me, tag along. And I was like 7 years old, and that's kind of helped foster my love for basketball, was going to tournament games and stopping and getting Wendy's and eating in the back of a van and going to these tournament games and standing outside and waiting for a ticket. And that place was cool. And then I think of the last one I really think about is St. John Arena.
Okay, yeah.
Going and watching like Nate Davis, who was my age, he's a year older than me, but going to watch him play some big games up there against Fort Fry, or whether it was Garraway, some huge games. And that arena was really cool. If you ever had the chance to go in there, it was really neat. But those are the ones I think of, truthfully, locally and tournament-wise.
Yeah. Speaking of really cool, you brought this wooden piece behind us here.
Yeah.
What? I think that's really cool. What's the story behind that?
So we always used to do a fundraiser in the beginning of the year. We do like a reverse raffle or something to help raise money, and we would have people make decorative baskets or holiday crafts or just anything. We do like a Chinese auction table, and I had a parent say, "Hey, I can make some crafts and stuff, and be a cool thing to put on the table." And he made one of these, and as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I got to have one of those. I said,
Sure.
We're going to sell that one you brought, but you're going to have to make me one. I got to have it. So it was a player I had from, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I don't even think he played his last few years. He played when he was like a freshman, sophomore. But his dad made that for me, so I've kept it ever since and have it in my classroom sometimes. And I'm actually going to take it home, put it in finishing my man cave up at home.
Oh,
so I'm going to hang it down there. Got a wall
no
for
doubt.
that. So yeah, it's just a cool piece. Means a lot to me. It's pretty neat.
Well, we hope we can provide you with in addition to that.
Okay.
We'll give you this to go on your travels.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We've all got one around here, and it's good signifier that you're here inside the huddle.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Hey, well, we appreciate your time. Zach Delman, Union Local boys basketball head coach. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, and we once again appreciate Coach and his time and his willingness to come and sit down for a little while and talk high school hoops, because it's that time of year. And as I said in a recent video last night, actually, he's not the last one we'll talk to. So make sure you stay tuned to Harco Media Network, because we've got a lot of things coming, and we're certainly excited for high school basketball season coming up here in the Ohio Valley. With that being said, that's all we've got for tonight's episode of Hometown Huddle. We're so glad you decided to join us this evening, and we thank you for watching. The one thing I'll ask you to do before leaving here is subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, follow, whatever it is on the Facebook page, the Instagram page, the Twitter page, the TikTok page. I think that's it. That's all we need you to do. And as I said on Tuesday night, we'll take care of the rest, and we'll continue to strive to give you quality content week in and week out. It's almost as though I'm quoting something. But with that being said, we'll get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next week.